Okay, hey, everyone, to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today I have a really cool review for you from the brand Joseph Bonnie, which is actually a brand that you guys recommended to me down in the comments when I was kind of going through, praising different types of Tropic straps. You guys recommended them to me, checked out the brand, reviewed their straps, and have kept a close eye. But a little bit about them. They are self-described as a team of passionate Frenchies based in Paris who strive to go against ever-changing trends of fashion and pretty much deliver timeless creations. They are a web shop born out of an online magazine and now providing either locally French source Joseph and Bonnie branded products or well-curated third-party goods like vintage watches to pair with their wonderful straps. This is the Bund strap in the Seattle almond color, and this is the 19 millimeter diameter. Many of us know the Bund bracelet as the one worn by Paul Newman at Sebring on his now famous Rolex Daytona, or even Steve McQueen on his Hanhart 417 chronograph. Excellent references, which in terms of cool and casual elegance give us lessons time and time again. Now, this was redesigned by Joseph Bonnie in 2018 for a more elegant look while worn, and it's back in several combinations like this particular colorway. This is also known as the American Plate design, since these Bund straps are really two-part set composed of a regular strap and then what is commonly known as the American Plate, which was developed for the Army, and those watch straps were meant to avoid damage to the watches from excessive sweat, of course, because they were much less water resistant, as well as protect you from injuries from direct contact with your skin for a burning or freezing case. And then when you get into kind of everything else and all the other qualities rolled into this particular strap, you're getting these really gorgeous leather options with great color palettes, great textures. And then this thing is just even more resilient in terms of its wearability. I think that's just really cool. These are not, bargain basement straps by any means. These actually go for $158 direct, but they do have a beautiful look, and I think it paired really, really well with my vintage Air King reference 5500, which is from the 1980s. So with that said, that was quite a long intro, but let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, guys, now this little guy, if you are new to the channel, this is a family heirloom that was passed down. It was my grandmother's watch, passed down to my mom, and then my mom passed it down to my daughter after her passing. And of course, my daughter is 7 years old now. She can't just walk around with a Rolex on. So I have a larger wrist, and this is a smaller reference watch. This is only a 34 millimeter watch. The lug to lug is extremely small. It's under 40 millimeters. It's 39.5 millimeters. Lug to lug, guys, that's end to end. So this thing is a small watch, but I did notice on their site, you see this, and it just adds a little bit more of wrist presence. Unfortunately for me, because of that extremely short lug to lug and my larger wrist, that means that when I try to put this on, it's going to be a tight squeeze. So for me, unfortunately, this isn't going to be the best solution to get a little bit more wrist presence out of my vintage watch. But for some of you guys with smaller wrists, this could absolutely help do the trick. Check that out. That's actually weirdly uncentered. There we go. Check that out. So get it a little closer. It's going to make it look a lot larger thanks to some lens distortion, but you guys can also breathe in that beautifully aged and patinaed dial and handset. So also comes in this great linen bag or cotton. And then what I'll do is I'll keep my hand down here and I'll just tighten up the shot so you guys can get a better look at a truer aspect ratio. Still quite small, absolutely. And again, I'm down to like the very last hole just because the combination of my larger 7.5-inch wrist and the extremely short lug to lug under 40 millimeters. Most times you're thinking lug to lug is going to be 46 to 48, even up to 50 plus millimeters long. So that definitely shortchanged me in this case. But I will say, aesthetically, right? If we discount that, I still think it's worth highlighting because I think it does add a beautiful look to the watch that ties back to a wonderful history of functionality, which again, I think speaks to something like a Rolex, right? Obviously tying all the way back to being a very functional timepiece that actually became very desirable due to how well equipped and how different they were compared to the rest of the market, where things were quite ornate and very fragile by comparison. You could get something like this Rolex, and there are famous oyster cases, and you would have water resistance, you would have decent shock resistance, and you have a piece that is really heirloom ready because it can be passed down through multiple generations. So I do like that tie back, and I think it's very appropriate for something like this, for a Bund strap that is meant to be a little bit dressier. And of course, maybe the tone on tone of my skin tone, doesn't offer the greatest, contrast for you. But I will say that this is quite a nice look, and I do think it is very, very handsome. So we'll go ahead and pop this off the wrist, guys, and take a closer look at just some of these details here. So for $158 direct, you do get, of course, this French sourced beautiful material here. The leather is extremely supple. Everything is signed Joseph Bonny. Hey, guess what? Joseph Bonny, yes. So very, very nice. And I mean, just these straps alone typically can be very, very expensive just because of how nice they are. Look at that beautiful kind of tumbled pattern there. It just looks very, very handsome, and it just ties in so well to the natural patina of this dial. So you might have something back home that would really set this off, or hey, maybe you're like me, maybe not with a wrist not quite as large, but I really enjoy, if you guys watch my channel, mostly sports watches, dive watches, watches that are in that 40 millimeter and up range. And for me, 38 is kind of my sweet spot. So when it comes to something like this, being at 34 millimeters, it is definitely outside of my comfort zone. So if you're like that, hey, maybe you try something like this out. Maybe 36 is normally your comfort zone, and 34 is a little bit too small. But something like this can add a nice bit of visual weight while still feeling very period correct, right? Because it does have this really cool vintage aesthetic to it. Looks like something an adventurer would wear, right? Or at the end of the day, it's a very sporty strap, again, tying back to the likes of Paul Newman and Steve McQueen. So they do have a couple of different kind of size variations. There's the 18 millimeter variation, which has a 14 millimeter buckle, 19 with the 16 millimeter buckle, which is what you see here, 20 millimeter with a 16 millimeter buckle, and then 22 with an 18 millimeter buckle end. So really, really nice tapers kind of baked in terms of the beautiful flow of these straps when you're going to be looking at these. You can also get it with either a gold or silver buckle option. Of course, I opted for the silver. And then there's actually 10 different color texture options to go with, but for me, this one really stood out as just being really perfect for this watch. And who knows, maybe my wife will wear it on this strap and it'll get some extra time. And I think even from that perspective, although it is quite masculine, that's also a look these days, honestly, to kind of make something look a little bit more masculine on a feminine wrist. And it does look like, beautiful leather accessory with fine stitching. And that stitching even really ties beautifully into a lot of the color palettes here. So for me, even then, it's, although it might not work for me, hey, at least somebody will get some wear out of this thing for this generation. So my daughter will see this, on her mom's wrist, and then eventually she'll want to wear it on her wrist, and we can continue on with that legacy. And that's some of the things you kind of have to think about in creative solutions you have to think of when you do have these types of heirloom pieces. And no, it's not the most expensive. If anything, it's probably the cheapest Rolex you can buy within kind of the vintage era. It's the most approachable. So for some of you, you might just be interested in buying one of these watches and thinking, hey, maybe I can wear it and start a new trend or a new tradition, or kickstart a new heirlooms, which I think this is a really great model if from that perspective. One, because it's very affordable, and two, they're very capable and very, very attractive watches, which I can absolutely appreciate. This is the reference 5500, again from the 1980s, 34 millimeter diameter, 11.8 millimeters thick, and that's counting that nice crystal there, which is of course going to be about I believe plexiglass, and 39.5 millimeters lug to lug, quite short, stainless steel, brushed and polished. So for me, guys, closing thoughts, I do wish this was longer. As for kind of, for me, the Bund style looks best paired with a smaller watch, right? Although you could put a larger watch on here. You think about, some really cool vintage chronographs would look fantastic on here as well. But yeah, I wish it was longer. Maybe I could have got some wear out of it, but honestly, I think it looks so good with just the watch static. I'm looking forward to my wife trying this piece on and seeing if she can get a kick out of it. So definitely check out my Instagram. I'll see if I can get her to do a wrist shot or something for me, and then you guys can take a look and see that, hey, maybe this might be something to to accentuate a piece and kind of bring it to life, and maybe get your significant other wearing a cool vintage piece instead of your typical Michael Kors or other offerings. So again, if you account for smaller watch dimensions and the added thickness of that plate, you would want something longer, right? So if I was going to go back to Joseph Bonney and say, hey, look, what would my critiques be? I wish it was longer, especially when you're thinking you're adding thickness there, and typically you're going to be putting a smaller watch in here. So it would be nice to get some added length. Also, you can just take this out and wear it as a normal strap if you don't want to have this cool back plate. But I think it definitely does add some charm, add some wrist presence, especially now as, sizes, although they are going back to more classic sizes, this stuff like this definitely is going to feel just a little bit more proportionate, on a modern wrist. So I really do like this a lot. So for those with smaller wrists or larger watches, right, this could absolutely be a fantastic option, and I cannot complain in terms of the build quality. So big thank you to Joseph Bonney for being kind enough to send this strap in for me to check out. And again, thank you to you all, to my awesome viewers, because you guys are the ones who recommended this brand to me so that I could, share some of my thoughts and feedback with you on their products. And these are really, really top notch. So with that said, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked the video, please do a like. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.